And so now LeVar tells us that there's so many different parts of the country, and people are a little different in different areas, and there are some people who use slightly different words. So he takes a paper bag and sets it on, I guess, an invisible shelf, which is also painted blue or green. It's just sitting there in the air. And we also see paper bags floating around in the background behind him. And he says that he calls this object a paper bag, but some people call it a poke, and other people call it a sack. I've heard of a paper sack, but I've never heard it being called a poke. Is that really a thing? Let's see. A paper bag is called a poke because the word poke itself means a small bag or sack, according to Google. This term is a remnant of Scottish and Old English. It's particularly used in the American South. Okay. And now we take a look at some other things that have some different words. LeVar says, "What do you call this?" When I was a kid, this was one of my favorite parts of the show because first we see a paper bag, which you often keep food in it, and now LeVar's showing us another kind of food. Of course, I know that this looks like a hot dog. And now we see 4 kids each holding up, I guess, a little miniature chroma key screen because they hold these little picture frames and they move around a little bit, but the picture inside it does not move. And each of their pictures makes up a picture of a hot dog when they stand next to each other. So the one kid says, "This is what I call a hot dog." The next one says, "Where I come from, we call it a footlong." Next one, "I call it a frankfurter." And one says, "It's a wiener." A footlong hot dog. I've heard of frankfurter and I've heard of wiener. I've heard of all those. Okay. And next we see a pair of sneakers, which is not food. It's kind of weird that they put it in this segment here because we see another piece of food after that. So he's holding a pair of shoes. At first I thought this little girl said, "They look kind of like shoes to me," but no, she said, "They look like tennis shoes to me." Next kid says, "I call them sneakers." One says, "They're called kicks." As soon as I heard that when I was 3 years old, I immediately thought of Kix cereal. I've never heard of shoes being called kicks, but I've heard of Kix cereal. Because right around this time, I started watching another PBS Kids show called Clifford the Big Red Dog, and it was sponsored by Kix cereal. And what made it even weirder was that, this little girl pops up kind of diagonally in the bottom left corner, and when I think of the Kix logo, it was also diagonal along the box. The Kix cereal has a diagonal logo on the box, and this little girl is like appearing diagonally, and she says Kix, referring to those kind of shoes. That's kind of funny. And one more kid says that he calls them gym shoes. And now we got what looks like some kind of sandwich. When I was a little kid, I had no idea what kind of food that was. I thought it looked kind of familiar, but I didn't know what it was called. The kids say, "It's a grinder." I call it a submarine. Looks like a hoagie. That's what I call a hero. As a little kid, I'd never heard of any of those terms before. Wasn't quite sure why you would call it a grinder. Like, does it have ground up food inside it? I don't know. I knew what a submarine was because on Franklin the Turtle, on Nick Jr., Franklin wanted a toy submarine to play with, so I knew what a submarine was, but I never heard a sandwich being referred to that. Hoagie, I have heard of sandwiches being referred to as hoagies, and when I got a little bit older, at Wise Markets in the deli departments, there was a sign that said hoagie, had that kind of sandwich on a picture, and so I looked at that and thought, so that's what they were talking about on Reading Rainbow. It's that kind of sandwich, a hoagie. And I kind of knew what a hero was, like a superhero, but I didn't know why they would give a sandwich that name. Now what I'm going to do here is we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to see one of my favorite parts of this episode, where 2 kids talk about one of the largest malls in the United States, which is perfect because shopping malls, for many years throughout my childhood and today, is another one of my special interests. So we'll find out about that shortly.